Welcome to the Intimate Feminine, opening channels to deeper intimacy in sex, relationship, and love. Allow yourself to sink in as everything inside you becomes beautifully and sensually unfurled.
Hi, it's Jacqueline. In this episode, you'll experience the beautifully alive exuberance of feral female Isis Leeor. I especially love how she speaks of working with humans as unwrapping a present on Christmas morning. This very conversation felt like that to me. The delightfully unexpected unwrapping of gorgeously polished diamonds from our time together in the very close aftermath of the telling. Pause, deepen in, and settle. As together, George and I share an intimate conversation with our very first relationship mentor, Isis Leeor. Welcome, everyone, to the Intimate Feminine podcast. And today I am delighted to be joined not only by my love, George Robinson, but also Isis Leeor, who for us, I believe we began with Isis in, it was 2020, April, May. We were still living in Atlanta. We were still in the big house. And from what I recall, I came across a post of yours, Isis, and you were speaking. I cannot recall the exact details, but you were speaking something to the effect of men and how men at times were experiencing relationship. You were talking about it from the perspective of yourself as well as your clients. There was something I read in your post that for me, I feel like George would understand this. And for George and I, it was really the first time on a level of what had lived in, quote, my world, that I read it to him, and I had read him many things knowing we were in major evolution. And this particular time, your energy, your words, your respect for the masculine impacted him, and he sat with it.
Absolutely.
And do you remember that, babe?
Well, not specifically in the words that you put in, but what I do remember was that there was the first Isis. You were really the first person that I've ever interacted with in that manner, as a mentor, as a coach. I had never really opened up to that type of conversation, understanding, awareness, consciousness, all of those things that, quite frankly, Jacqueline had been speaking about for quite a while, but I had never really opened up to somebody else. And you were extremely impactful to me. And we'll get into some of the specifics as to what has stayed with me. But in the situation that we were in and the experience that we were in, I was really struggling to understand myself and what was going on around me. And you were extremely helpful with that.
I just want to acknowledge you, George. I feel like it really takes a certain type of heroism to be a man in this moment and to not have a path, that's clear to walk, or not have the language, or not even know what questions to ask yourself. And then be in this barrage of like, I should be here, and have no idea how to engage with it, and show up and just sit in that unknown and create the path. I mean, I just thank you.
Well, I thank you. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for you, and I appreciate that, and I acknowledge your support, your experience, your wisdom and how that impacted me and allowed me to move forward and open up to be the person that I am today. So I thank you.
Yep. Thank you. And a total freaking joy. Absolutely. Yay.
Yeah. And thank you from me also, being the partner in that, being the feminine, the woman in that, who you and I are going to have another conversation about, that longing that becomes desperation. And I do want to just then also welcome you into our space. I sort of got off and running there, remembering how we connected with you. So I want to just take a moment and really connect our listeners, and even George and myself, even more with you for this conversation. So anything you want to share about you or your work, please feel free as you come into this sort of intimate feminine space and share this time with us.
Ooh, interesting. Well, I mean, my great delight is to be curious about who somebody is, and then help them unwrap everything that's not them, so that we can both see the present inside. Like, for me, each time I get to sit in front of someone, it's like Christmas morning, where I'm like, I think it's this. It smells like this. More or less this size. Like, what's underneath the wrapping? Right. Bubble tape, like confetti. There it is, So to get to work with both of you in a moment where it was sort of make or break.
Absolutely.
Was even more fun because you were both really ready to take big risks to find out who you were. And I think there was an understanding on both sides of you had to be who you were to make it work together, and that was going to look completely different than how it had looked. And you had spent so much time doing the other things.
Yes.
So for me, that takes incredible courage to be at that place. And anything is really possible from that place, because you didn't come in saying, like, can you just tweak a little, just unwrap a little, just take off the bow. You're like, I don't care, just straight rip it. Yeah. We're going to get there. We have to get there. And there was such commitment and such dedication. And that is how I like to unwrap presents. So super exciting. And, here we are, and you've freaking done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've done it. Like, all I was like, what if we pull here? What if we unravel there? And
we did.
You did it.
And we did pull, and we did unravel, and it feels beautiful. It's not very often that you go through a time of space where you're working with somebody who's your coach or mentor, and 2 years later you sit down, and not only have you reached that point you so deeply desired and were moving towards, but you're thriving in it. And from where I sit today, at least, that feels miraculous. And I know for George, because I've walked beside him and I've heard him tell people, I've heard George speak to other people, this is how you come into your body. This is the practice.
Very much so. In fact, I alluded to in a previous episode some of the practices that I still use today that you were instrumental in teaching me to open up into those things and kind of recognize those things. And I'll get into a couple of specifics, but let me just kind of back up for a moment. And you're 100% right in that when we met you, when you came into our lives, there was chaos. There was there was anger, there was hurt, there was surprise, there was a lot of different things. I think, as I previously alluded to in that episode, I felt like I had always done everything that I was supposed to do. I worked hard. I saved money. I took care of my family. I paid my bills. I supported them in every way that I possibly could. And then when Jacqueline came to me with her revelation, it absolutely felt like the rug had been completely pulled from underneath my feet. I felt, that all of that work, all of that dedication was for nothing. And I was struggling with trying to understand, number one, how that could happen, and number two, how to be myself through this process. And I remember one of our first conversations was alluding to the fact that I had left all of my energy at work, that I had left it all out inside of me. And I had put everything into my job, my career, my kids, my home, and had nothing left to bring to my relationship. And that was the first paramount revelation that came from our conversations. Was that aha, that I had been doing that. So I from there it all started, and it worked through everything, the whole gamut at that point. The whole gamut from do you remember me like pounding on the bed?
Vaguely, yeah. I remember that being a big deal, and I think this is also a big thing for men of like, am I dangerous if I let myself really feel and express?
Yeah, that's exactly the comments that you made, is that you are safe. You are not going to hurt anybody. You just need to let that out. And that was part of the process, was, as you say, unwrapping, to allow those feelings to kind of come through you, so that you knew who you were. And it was one step after another from there.
Yeah, and having tools to use to, like, okay, I mean, a lot of people experience anger. They get so pressurized that they disassociate, and that's when they become dangerous, because they're not actually there to express their anger. And nobody sits down and says, well, if you hit the bed this way, or, if you move it this way, it could actually empower you and help you.
Right.
But if you don't express it, that's when it, and then it can come out sideways. It can come out in a way that's hurtful. It can come out in a way, that it is dangerous, right? Because you're not there to decide how you're going to express.
Absolutely. And as I've acknowledged previously as well, there was anger, and you can't go through some revelation transition without feeling some of those very strong feelings. And if you try to repress them, you're not going to grow through it. At least in my awareness and my understanding and my experience.
Yeah, and the other side of anger is passion, and joy. So it's not about, let me just suppress it, because then you suppress the other side. It's, how do I move it in a way that makes my life more alive? How do I move it in a way where I can be big this way with my partner? How do I move it in a way where I'm like, oh, there's nothing wrong here. It's just alive. And it's the suppression that makes it dangerous, not the thing itself, right? Because it gets pressurized over time. Yeah.
They say an expert is just a drip under pressure. So I kind of get that feeling that, that pressurized water, or that pressurized energy, when it just gets too much, it explodes. And to allow that to be out there and not get to that pressurized situation is very healthy.
Yeah. And I mean, we're creatures, we're animals. It's natural. Like, that's how our body wants to work. And when we don't let it, that's when suddenly most of our energy is going to that suppression, and we're not able to really be there with our children, with our, with our partner. And I think the thing that has been so important in our work together too is this awareness of like, oh, my relationship includes me. It's not about checking the boxes, so now I have a partner. It's about learning how to be there. Like my partnership, half of that is me.
Right.
Yes.
Half of that is what I want. Half of that is who I am. Half of that is my feelings. Half of that is like adding to that co-creation, as opposed to, I feel like the way you both were educated is do these things and then you're going to be safe and fine and everything will work out at the expense of yourself. So to get to this place where suddenly you're like, all I want is me and this other person. Where the fuck am I? Where the fuck are they?
Yeah.
And all I know how to do is put myself into a pressurized little box.
Mm.
Like, how do you undo all of that conditioning? Like, is that going to be okay? Are you going to be welcome? How do you get back? Like, George, one of my first questions was, what do you like?
Yeah.
Right?
And it took me a while to figure that out. I just had no answer for you at that point. It seems like a very remedial question, but when you really are looking to be in depth of the answer, it's a lot more than you might have bargained for.
Yeah. And even just creating this window of space of, does it matter? Does it matter what I like? Or does it matter the way that I'm checking the boxes and showing up and being there for other people? Like, oh my God, wait, do you mean I matter? Like,
yeah. And I can say for myself in that equation, not only was I experiencing my own where am I and do I matter through my lens, but especially sitting here and looking back, not only was I checking the boxes for myself, I had boxes to check for the expectations of what it was to be in relationship from the time I was 20 and married him. I had all of these ideals and ideas of what that meant and what it would look like. And it never occurred to me in the way that you're speaking it now to just, well, who are you? What are you about?
Yeah.
It was in there because I remember saying, I just want you. It's not all the things. It's just you. And yet
I had no idea what that really meant, but
of course, yeah.
In that moment at all.
Other than that you were giving that to
I
me.
felt like I am
felt
giving
that,
everything to you. I am giving everything that I have. All of my energy is all for you, even though it wasn't with you, it was for you. And that's a common misunderstanding, I think.
Of course. And I think this is one reason having this conversation is so important. Like, George, you being able to share that with other men of like, you matter.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Is so healing and so huge. I mean, we tend to think so often about how women have been warped and how women have been taught to give themselves away, but men have been doing the same thing.
Yes.
Yes.
And idealizing the same thing in men, and then making that like, oh, this is a man and it's masculine. Of course, that is so freaking confusing. You're like, I'm supposed to be this, I'm supposed to be that, I'm supposed to endlessly like have resources to give. It's a box as opposed to saying like, what do you like? How do you feel? Like, what happens when you're mad? What happens when you're tired? Like, let's learn the basic operating tools of your body so that you can arrive in a place where you actually can be there, and that's what matters. And everything else you do is extra.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a fantastic segue into probably one of the most important pieces that I still use today. And through all of that process, I was up through my head, and it was very clear that I was up in my head all the time about how to make things work, how to be, was all in my head. And one of the most important things that I still utilize today is how to get down into my body. And of course, when someone first tells you that, they're like, well, of course I'm in my body. I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm talking, I'm feeling, you pinch me, it stings. I'm in my body. And not having an understanding of what that truly meant was very difficult. So really understanding how to bring yourself down, to be grounded in your body and to feel yourself, allows you to ground and know what you want at that point. And I've talked to a number of people, and I don't know if I'm sure you remember this, when you they gave me the exercise, the practice of putting my hands behind my back, sitting in a straight back chair. And I think you alluded to the fact that you found that police officers utilized that experience by handcuffing people behind their back and then putting them in the back of a cruiser, that it's a calming exercise, and it allows you to feel your body coming up, your breath coming up, and to actually bring yourself down into your body so that you can feel what you want and what you're going through, not what you think you are, but what you feel you are. And that's absolutely imperative to determining what you want and know what you want. So I appreciate that. And I used that 15 minutes ago. Swear to God, I did.
Yeah. I mean, I use these tools too, because they work.
Yeah. There you go. The proof is in the pudding, right?
And I think we all know, and especially the pressure as a man of like, know what you're doing, lead, have certainty. If you're up here, and Jacqueline, we know what it feels like to be up here too, and anything is possible, any scenario, any endpoint is possible, and you're trying to strategize based on all things that have happened in the past, like in this kind of little computer, and it's crazy making. How can you find certainty unless you get to this place where you're in your body, relaxed enough to have that moment of, oh, it's this, right? Just like we talked about, like the hunter, where they're using all of their senses. They're not like, well, the deer could be behind the tree, or the deer could be in the bush, or the deer could be like, let me prepare. You can't prepare for all those scenarios. You have to drop in, you have to be present and let your instinct lead you. But you can't get to your instinct from here. So that's part of the confusion when you're getting information from, like women who are doing this type of work, being like, I want you to be present. I want you to know what you're doing. And you're like, but there's just infinite possibility and like too many things. You're like, how do I strategize? And the secret is you don't. No. You get into this place where it's just this. And it's really simple and clear. Like there's a no, there's a yes, just like a hunter. And when you drop in like that, you were able to access that place. And thank God for all of us to have a place of certainty where we know, okay, this, now this, now this, in a world that's so dynamic and feels so uncertain sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, even as a professional, be able to lead from that place, right? It's a very grounded, embodied space, as opposed to, I think, what can happen with all that pressure, especially for men, is you become like so inflated here because you realize you don't have control over everything. You don't have the navigation. And so you're trying. And then suddenly like you're completely cut off from joy, sensation, the capacity to really receive love. Like it's like a tumbleweed going downhill, just like accumulating stuff. And we were just like, whoa, stop that. New system.
Well, in this world, as you pointed out, this world is overwhelming at times. And there is so much coming at you every day, especially if you're in a professional career and you're out there trying to do the work, trying to make something of yourself, for your family, for your legacy. And there's just so much that is literally up here in your head that it's absolutely imperative to be able to quiet yourself so that you can hear that voice in your heart.
Right. Right. Or even that voice of instinct that's like, oh, I heard a twig, the deer's over there. I'm here enough to be able to respond, as opposed to like, la, 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 la. This could be, let me do a spreadsheet. Da, 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 I can't be with you now. Cause
Right.
To be that there, to be able to react with every resource you have, as opposed to lost, right? Because if you're hunting and you're not, you're going to get eaten. Right? You're going to hurt yourself. But here we are behind computers, driving cars, all these things, and nobody is reminding us of like, hey. Right? And then when you get to be with your lover, you're still up here because this is what you're practicing. Right? But being in that instinct allows you to lead in your work and also allows you to be there with your partner.
Yes.
And allows you to relax because there's something that you don't have to control. It's already in there.
Right.
Yes.
It's something you access. You don't have to cultivate it. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to be there to let it happen.
Allow it. Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know that I ever heard you speak the hunter analogy. It's so crystal clear. And especially when you're talking to a man who that hunter instinct is innate in him. One of your beautiful gifts, I feel a little weepy, is to just simplify it. To just simplify it. And you're not simplifying it down to nothing. You're simplifying it to a pure essence of not just being in divinity, but being able to come down and actually engage through true humanity and allow all of that to integrate and be experienced within and then shared. And watching George while he was working with you, but then it's been 2.5 years since the revelation, and watching him purify, not because he wasn't clean, but purify in the sense that we're talking about down to the pure presence of who he is, not just the masculine, not just men, which is what I brought. This is what the masculine is. This is how it's supposed to be. Like I was fresh, newborn flesh baby out of what it's supposed to look like when we began working with you. And no doubt that presented extra challenge in navigating through all of the layers. So I do just want to extend appreciation for how you are able to clarify it down to instinct, which is it's yours and it's who you are. And it's intoxicating when I feel that in him, which is more and more and more and more. And it's not more and more of what he's giving to me.
Right.
It's more of him being himself.
Right.
He didn't have to do something for me. He's George.
Well, I'd also add that, as a man, as a confident man, I can take care of this myself. I can do this myself. I don't need anybody else. I'll do it myself. I'll take care of this. Huge mistake. You cannot do it yourself. And that's one thing that working with you really, really helped me see that by allowing a conversation and an awareness of some of these intricacies that are part of being human, and the way that you presented them to me, allowed me to open up and to grow from that. And I don't feel like I would have grown to the point that I am now without allowing myself to feel and receive what you were talking about. And it was absolutely imperative. I also remember, and we were, before we got started recording, we were talking about something that I came across that you had asked me to do in our coaching sessions, and it was about me understanding what the true value in myself is. That you can take everything away, and you're still a human being. You're still very valuable. Instead of measuring it by all the things that society says that this is how you measure being a successful man, is you have a big house and you have a nice car and you have lots of money in the bank and everyone, admires you and all of that. Well, that's all outside of you. That's not inside of you and how you value yourself. And you asked me to go to my 3 kids and to Jacqueline and ask them to put down the 10 reasons that they loved me, what they loved the most about me, the 10 biggest things they loved about me, which was extremely uncomfortable. I said, now remember the conversation that I'm like, yeah, I can go to Jacqueline and ask her that. Yeah, that's not a big deal. But to go to my kids, no, that's not. I'm really going to have to struggle with that. And I ended up doing it. So I ended up going there, and they wrote 10 of the most incredible things. Each one of them really, really made me emotional at times. Yeah. And I hung on to it. And I was looking on my phone the other day, yesterday actually, and looking to put some other notes and some things. And I came across it for the first time in about 6 months. And it was just, I read through it again, and it was still as powerful as the first day they had written it. And it was an incredible exercise of the value that you perceive yourself as is not at all what it truly is. And that exemplified it.
And that the beauty of him coming across this last night. May I?
Yeah, of course.
So he had been, there's a consulting job he's doing nearby, and he had been in their office space and came home and was really exhausted. And really, I could tell he had used a lot of brain power working the numbers during the day. And time got away from him, and it was a little bit later, and he came home, and we've just returned back to being in our main cottage near the ocean. And he hadn't been to the ocean yet, which for George, the ocean is so soothing.
It's a big deal.
And so he said, well, I'm going to walk over to the beach and see the ocean if you want to come with me. And I said, well, what do you prefer? Do you want to go just you or us? And he said, well, I think I'd like to go just myself. I'm just going to go sit on my bench. And so Isis, he had gone over there without him saying it. I know him well enough to do exactly what we're talking about and give himself that space and get into himself after being in an intense headspace all day. And he went to open his notes on his phone. We have this call with you today. Yeah. And that's what's there. Yeah. And he came back, and it just, he was so invigorated by not only what his children had said, but this peace as we were entering this space with you that still touches that place. It's gold.
It makes me really happy. I mean, I think it's that way for all of us, this moment of arriving and being like, I have value, period. And what I create from there, that's play. But what matters is I have value already. Like there's nothing I need to earn.
Right.
And to really be able to get that, especially, as a man, it changes everything like that. And I think for women too, that's not what we're giving. It's not what we look like. It's the feeling of being around someone who's truly being themselves.
Yeah.
That fullness, that flavor, that permission is huge.
Everything.
And what you want to do after that, that's up to you. That's the play. Like that's not the thing you have to do to then maybe one day earn the right to be yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And then to wake up in your partnership and to wake up and be there with your children and understand like it was never about what I was doing for them. It was my laugh or my warmth, like things that I could lose everything and they would still love me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that makes everything lighter. Like for me, I know when I really feel that, it enables me to take more risks in my business because I'm like, this has nothing to do with my value.
Right. Yes.
This is play. And what a difference then growing up in New Jersey and being like, basically, I have to earn my right to have this next breath. I have to ace this, and then maybe I'll deserve to eat later.
Do your chores.
Right.
Make sure you do your chores. Make sure you eat all your vegetables. All of those things that as kids we were all kind of conditioned for, and that you have to do all of this in order to be good, to be right, to be valuable. Yeah.
To survive. Like, how do I mold myself to make everybody comfortable with me? And then you grow up and you realize, wow, I have the freedom to actually be who I am and then create a life where people want that.
From the inside out. It's such a different reality than, as you say, what we grow up in, which is taking stock of the energy and the people and their emotions, their needs, their response, and living from the outside according to that. What you exude and embody so beautifully and brought to each of us in unique ways is, for me, more deeply how to live from the inside out. And for George, as a man, not that you as a woman gave him permission, but you as somebody who understands how to shift it, brought, I guess it wasn't a permission of sorts, but it wasn't an authority permission. It was an acceptance and an energy of the space permission to just be George, just be George.
Yeah. And I mean, you both know, like I've lived this stuff, right? I'm not just like, I read a book on this and I think that we should do this now because you're broke and we're going to fix it. I'm just like, yeah, you remember that moment when I was walking in New Jersey and I was going to the bathroom and I realized at 17 years old that I was walking there like with this attitude of like, I have purpose, fuck off, I know what I'm doing. And I was like, huh. I don't know if maybe this is not quite right here. And I feel like even in this moment, I feel like I have to know exactly what I'm doing and be in control and keep it together and like let you all know, like I'm fine. I'm going to the bathroom. What does that mean for the rest of my life? Like, what does that mean in terms of feelings? Like I'm safe to take a risk, or I'm safe to show you how I feel, or that you want the mess of who I am. I don't even want the mess of who I am. I just want to say, fuck off. I know what I'm doing. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trading. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking from these places where I'm like, oh yeah, I had to unwind myself from, here's what I did. Here are the things that work. Like, I think that's the really, Jacqueline, same with you. Like, that's the thing that gives us all permission. Sounds like, oh yeah, I know what that feels like.
Right. Right. Yeah. Which I love how you articulated that, because that's what I meant by the permission that comes from being in the space with another human who is embodying and living and walking. And I love that you say playing in that energetic field. That's the permission. It's not a written slip from your school teacher that says, yes, you may go to the bathroom. Here's your pass. It's, oh, well, this feels a little bit different, doesn't it?
Right. And like, I know what that feels like. That sucks, like, why don't we try it differently? Because I think it feels better when you try it differently.
Well, and I'll say that, that is one thing that made you relatable, that was allowed for us to have a connection to receive that. If there was a list of things and this is what you need to read and this is what you need to do, that would not have gotten the awareness, the consciousness, right. the results that I did get, is being able to relate to you as a person, having had those experiences and grown through them as well. And that's, I think, invariably what we are trying to pass on as well, is to pay it forward in the same exact way, is that we've experienced some of those things as well. And so we understand and we appreciate what the feelings are and how to work through them.
Right. And you get a certain amount of tools, like Jacqueline was talking about, George, you going to work and coming back and being a little bit of a South Park head. Right. And we all go through these flows.
Yes.
And then you use the tools and you come back. It's not necessarily like you just get somewhere and that's it. Right. It's like, I feel like this feeling, I'll speak for myself, of I'm going to do it myself. I can do it myself. Right? Like, this is what strength looks like. Is like you have a hammer and you're like, I'm going to use this for everything. And you see something that needs a screwdriver and you're like, I'll figure it out. Go to the bathroom. Don't bother me. I know what I'm doing. And just having this moment of like, look, if I was doing a building project, I wouldn't try and do everything with a hammer. Like, this isn't some airy fairy shit. I need a screwdriver. Like, do you have a screwdriver? Okay, great. Can you teach me how to use a screwdriver? Great. That's all we're doing.
Simple.
Yes. Right? And then you see something you need a screwdriver and you're like, oh, I'm not going to use a hammer on that. like, that's it. Easy peasy. Like, it's not like you're broken and we need to fix you. It's just like we all, especially men, like you figure shit out. You're great at figuring shit out. And Jacqueline, you and I are also great at figuring shit out. This is just another thing. You figure it out because you get the right tools and you ask somebody who's done it enough times that they're going to be like, oh yeah, dude, don't use that. I've tried the hammer 50 times.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. Last time I hit my thumb, like, it's just not worth it.
Not good.
Let me tell you about this screwdriver over here.
Let me show you something.
Right? Like that's it. It doesn't need to be charged. It doesn't need to be like super confusing. And now you're gonna like wear spandex. It's just a new set of tools, knowing when to use them and incorporating them into your life in a way where you don't feel like life is controlling you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it so simple. It makes it so simple and so real. Like George said, you are real.
Yeah, no kidding.
There's one more piece. Did you want to say something?
No,
There's one more piece while we're still talking in the conversation with George that I want to drop in that I feel for both of us was highly potent and would come up for us again, probably a year after we first experienced it with you. And that was, we were actually here in Maine
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what prompted it, but I do recall exactly how it went, which was, okay, Jacqueline and George, can you stand up? Can you scoot the computer back? And can you stand up? And both of us are like, okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Because we never knew what you were going to bring. You know, that's the beauty. It's so unexpected. You can't be in the head and plan for it. And whatever was happening, I don't recall, but presumably because of how it went, I had some emotion. And you said, okay, now I want you to push against George's chest. And inside myself went, holy fuck, what? Yeah, do it. Can you, George? Can you take it? George?
Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to tell everyone, just shut your ears right now. Don't listen to this part. I don't want to scare them away, but go ahead.
And I did. And the beauty of it was it kept getting more and more energy behind it, more expression, more me instead of just my body. Okay, this is what she's telling me to do. Until finally, I was pushing against him with so much me, so much of what was truly inside of me in that moment. I collapsed on the floor in emotion. And the charge for George was,
don't do anything. Stand there, which was probably one of the more difficult things because I have always seen myself and felt, as a knight, as someone that would come and not rescue. I don't want to overstate it, but not to take the pain away, to pick someone back up, to raise them up, to hold them up, to support them, to do all of those things that a good guy does. And as everyone I believe knows, when we got married, I was 30, had been a banker for 10 years at that point. Jacqueline was 20 years old. She was very young, and it was a situation where I was the authority on most everything. And so I was there to protect and to pick up and to uphold and all of that. So one of the things that was imperative was to allow her to feel the feelings that she was feeling. And I remember that was the point that you were bringing through is if I try to go and pick her up, that's not allowing her to feel the things that are so important to her. If I remember right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the specifics. Like, Jacqueline, I don't remember you collapsing on the floor, but I remember this place where I think one of the beautiful things that you were doing, George, is just holding a space where she got to experience her own bigness.
Yes.
And to explore what that felt and looked like. Because sometimes I think it's easy to mistake big feelings for something's wrong.
Yes.
And most of the time it's not. And I think Jacqueline is fully capable of letting you know if something is wrong and she wants help. So to be in big anger, or to be in big grief, or to just be in big anything and have someone just stand there and be like, more, please.
He actually says that.
Yeah, it's so hot because it's like, I am not threatened. I think so often we go to help and really what's behind it is I'm uncomfortable with what you're feeling.
Nice.
And I want to fix it so that I don't need to sit with the intensity of this. And to be able to sit with the intensity of it, or as a friend would say, like, stand in the fire with somebody. It feels like such permission. I mean, Jacqueline, correct me, like, I'm curious your experience, but like, I know when I work with couples and when I've been in a partnership, I'm just like, oh, fake it, take it. And they're a hell yes to all of me, not just the bits that make them feel comfy.
Absolutely. Right. I agree with that 100%, Isis, because I do remember And it was so bizarre to me what was coming out of my mouth because it felt foreign. I was accustomed to him rescuing. Yeah. I was accustomed to him responding. And so I remember that tiny bit of conflict that he didn't, and the sort of mind voice, well, what does that mean? And yet there's this stronger part of me that is so, as you say, big and full in the emotion that I remember coming out of my mouth. These are my emotions. Yeah. You don't get to take them. Yeah. You don't get to just take that away from me so that I feel better. This belongs to me. It's mine to express. And that was a very new place for me to be, not only with George, with myself, and with everything I had known to that point. Because certainly as women in general, the thing is that you lean into that man and he takes it and he makes it better. And he's the sort of savior, is how we've all been taught, that this Prince Charming comes and everything is better. And from here in the feminine, that is such a disconnect from who and what a man and masculine energy truly is, because the experience we had with you would replay for us a year later. Oh, wow. And I was having ancestral trauma coming up, and I was again on the floor. We were in a place, I was in a place still trying to figure out if I could trust myself to choose who the man for me was. And then if it's George, could I trust him? Like, this is all that the head and the old talk happening. And I again was on the floor weeping, and he basically said, okay, well, I'm right here. I'm not going to pick you up. I'm not going to pick you up and take it away because I know this is for you, but I'm right here. I'm standing right here. It was masterful.
It stuck. It definitely resonated. So it stayed with me, that whole exercise. And it would stay with me today exactly the same way. It was that important of a moment that you coached us through.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And I feel like we're all always growing up within relationship.
Yes.
And so you have a kind of extreme example, Jacqueline, because you both were so young. So that transition from, boy to man and girl to woman is happening within your relationship. But it's that way for all of us, that there are these young parts where we want to be like, okay, right now, will you be dad? Or, right now, will you be mom? But it's a trap. Because the person's like, yes, then we're like, great, then I never want to sleep with you again. Because now you're my parent.
Yeah, right? No, right.
Right. And I both resent you and want to individuate from you, but don't go. Right. And the other person's like, what the hell? You baited me.
Right.
I don't know what you want. And which is where we found ourselves. I'm doing everything I feel want. And yet here we are with this revelation. How the hell did this happen? And enter Isis Leeor.
Right. Yeah. And part of it is just stepping back and being like, you know what? I'm going to be adult partnered to you regardless of how you're behaving, period. And there is a kind of super sexiness to that. And then in moments it's like, but I'm fine right now. Like, no, because, I don't want to sleep with a 5-year-old and you don't want to sleep with a parent. So I'm just right here. Like, I love you. I'm going to hold space for your process, but it is a process because you are an adult.
Yes.
Right? And you're going to arrive and I'm right here.
Yes. Yes. The beauty of that piece is it served us as a couple. And also, I would say, sitting here as a mama, the same practice. It's the same thing, because as a parent, you don't want your child to feel that bigness of disappointment or anger or pain. And so we as humans, we're stepping in to do this in multiple relationships across the board. Yeah. What we received and deepened into through our work with you serves, as we have said, and now I'm expanding that, not only us, but everybody that we touch, and now even more so.
That's gorgeous. I mean, that's really gorgeous. And I can imagine as a parent too, like, again, that difference between like being there and loving someone and in what they're going through versus trying to take it away because it's uncomfortable for you to see them suffer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a different accountability to like, you're perfect. This is the process. This is temporary. I love you. I'm here for the nitty gritty. And this is a weather front that will pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Is there anything you'd like to add, George Robinson?
I think I've said it all. I mean, Isis, I appreciate you. I love you. You changed my life, and I would highly recommend anyone to take the same walk.
Thank you. It has been such a gift to know you and continues to be a gift. And I love that you are so generous that anything you learn, you immediately want to help other people with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that too.
Yeah.
Yummy.
Yeah. And thank you for helping to pave a road for beautiful, courageous men. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Isis, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I mean, my website it looks like it's catered to women, but as you know now, I work also with men and couples. Often they come in through partners. So that's why I've just left my website that way, but not always. So you can go to my website, which is feral, like the cat, feralfemale.com. You can email me, isis@feralfemale.com, or you can find me on Facebook where I'm pretty active at Isis Leeor, Leeor, Isis like the terrorist group.
I think of it more like the goddess.
And the goddess.
Yeah,
I know.
the
When I
goddess.
say the terrorist group, they're like, oh yeah, I won't forget that. The goddess. Is it a Greek god? Is it a cat? And I'm just like, no. Just think of the terrorist group.
Of course you say that.
On my answering Racine message, I'm like, hi, this is Isis. And I'm like, sometimes I'm the goddess and sometimes I'm the terrorist. Please go ahead and leave me a message. And my friend is a Buddhist monk. He was like, what did she say? What did you say on your answering message? Did you say you were a therapist?
Yeah.
No, honey, no.
I sure didn't. You are an absolute delight from then until now. And we deeply love and appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's a bath of yum.
Thank you for being with George and I for this conversation.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. And thank you for asking me.
My total joy, Isis. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this time today. You can find and follow us on all major podcast platforms. We invite you to like, share, and be in touch. Find out more about Jacqueline and her work at JacquelineLRobinson.com. This is The Intimate Feminine, opening channels to deeper intimacy in sex, relationship, and love. This show is produced by Arlia Hoffman.